episode. One of my dear friends, colleagues, Jeremy Johnson. I like to call you JJ. Jeremy, thanks for coming in, man.
Absolutely. I am very stoked to do the podcast with you.
A big thank you to start. People might not know this, but one of the only reasons this kind of came up, like Easy Talk, the podcast, the studio, I came to Jeremy, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 months ago. Do you remember that lunch?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was pitching him an idea. Essentially, it was like, hey, man, I want to do a podcast, but I want to gear it towards like current events, politics, things of this nature. I want to have guests on, and I just basically want to talk about all the things that my inner circle is complaining about constantly. And me and Jeremy were bouncing ideas off each other. It was maybe like a 2 or 3 hour lunch. And by the time we left, I was like, I'm going to do this.
You really were. You were very focused at the end of it. And that was very cool to see. You know, I've been around the podcast world for, we're on 16 years now, I think. And so I'm always happy to kind of share my visions and what I've seen over the years, because I came from the points of when it was next to nothing terrestrial radio, and then I jumped into this world, and it was a whole lot. So I'm always happy to see people when they're like, yeah, man, I want to do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So
well, I was just glad you weren't like, no, don't do it. Like,
this
is a terrible business, like all these other things. The reason is I've had a lot of people tell me not to, but not for the business aspect, more than anything about the exposure.
Well, you know me. I'm not worried about exposure. I've done enough around, so yeah.
You know me. Neither am I.
Absolutely. So yeah. Podcasts are one of those kind of things that it gives everyone a voice. And I think that that's something that's needed, especially in kind of the way that you were talking about it. So I'm glad that you've made it to this point. And this is beautiful.
I appreciate that. Man.
This is a beautiful set. So
I'm being very like nonchalant about this. There have been some times where I was like stressing out of my mind because it was a lot more. I told Matt this. If I would have known from day one, because we had like some scope creep and all that stuff, if I would have known from day one how much money and effort it would have been from the get-go, I would not have done it.
Well, but that's anything in business, and anything, because once you start to see what it really is behind the curtain, it becomes a completely different animal than what you thought it was.
Oh yeah,
and it's a lot that what knocks people down. It knocks people down in business. It knocks people down in life, even into this. So it's one of those things that just happens, and you've got to fight through it. So
you bring up a good point, and that's like that risk aversion versus like whether or not you are capable of handling risk, the stress that comes with it, or whether you're not. I had a conversation with an individual. I don't want to name their name because they don't want to be on the podcast for obvious reasons. But essentially he was telling me, he was like, Ariane, there are some people that are 9-to-5 guys, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that are entrepreneurial minded. Some people are more, their skill sets and the way that they were created just caters to different avenues in life. The one thing, though, is that entrepreneurs should be respected. And I was like, well, why should entrepreneurs be respected? Only when I did it myself that I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, even if we fall short sometimes, We're not perfect, we're humans, we make mistakes, but damn, is it a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing that you'll work 100 hours a week to avoid going to a 40-hour week. But for some people, it's the only way that they can deal with it, because they don't want the boss. They don't want the confines of a desk. They don't want this. They don't want that. And there is so much more to it, though, that once you start to pull back the curtain, the ideas of being in business, being in podcasting is so much different than what I think is glamorized, that if people would see it, they probably, like you said, they wouldn't want to do it for real.
Yeah.
And that's why, if people come to me and they ask me questions, I'll answer anything in the world. We talked about this beforehand. I'm like, you can ask me anything you want to. It's so much behind the scenes that people will never see, that if you want to hear it, I'll tell you the bad parts. But if you want to know what the good parts are, I'll tell you that also. And you have to kind of balance between the two, because if not, you're going to kill somebody's dreams, no matter what it is. If I would have told you, man, don't do this. You don't want to be, it's too much work. There's so much money involved. There's all of this stuff. You got to have production. You got to have cameras. You got to have people editing. You got to have all of this stuff. Would you have looked at it and went, maybe you're right?
You're absolutely right.
But instead, if you know the good parts and what the end game is, and to see your product out there that lives in perpetuity. I have been very lucky in some of the stuff that I've done in this world, that, whenever I mixed our mixed martial arts backgrounds, into the world of podcasting, I got to do Rose Namajunas' first interview ever. And she was a UFC champ at one point, but I did her first interview as a pro ever. I was one of the first people to ever interview Tisha Torres and people like that. So that was, to me, worth it. And no matter what, all the work and all the other stuff, and I came in the old days of it when you ran around with a high-8 camera and you had tapes and things like that. So, you guys have it really amazing at the moment. So,
no, yeah, sometimes I forget that I am blessed by having a networking circle that is, in my opinion, like, if you look at the average age of the friends that I have or the people that I interact with, I'm the younger by a good margin.
Yeah,
and
it's all us old guys, right?
No, can I be frank with you?
Sure.
It's benefited my life to no end.
Sure.
My boss told me once, he said, your net worth is your network. And he is 100% true.
Absolutely.
Or 100% on the money. I mean, the amount that my life has changed in a short amount of time, and it's not that I developed a skill set that I didn't have before. It's not that I, somehow became much more intelligent or my oratory skills were, they have vastly changed in the short amount of time. No, everything was the same. The only thing that was different was the people around me and the opportunities that were afforded to me by knowing them. I cannot stress this enough. Like, I don't think there's anything on this planet more. The cost is so much of being an introvert. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know people, if you can't go out there and make relationships, if you can't go out there and develop a relationship with an individual, there's very few opportunities that you can just fabricate out of thin air yourself. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but what I am saying is it is extremely difficult.
So how do you feel in the world of like mentors? Because to me, I have had mentors throughout every facet of things that I've done. And I mean, I've done a lot of stuff. I tell people a lot of times it's going to sound like I'm bragging. It's going to sound like I'm making it up. It's not. I've really done all of it, but it was because I had the right mentors to kind of push me along in those ways. Whenever I was first starting in business, I had an amazing mentor who taught me the gist of how real estate works. I had someone who helped me in the idea of how to run a business, how to have employees, how to do that. I would have never been able to do that. I am the exception to some of that rule because I don't have a college degree. I never did that. Everything was bootstrapped up. But I had enough mentors along the way that it brought me to the capabilities to do things like that. So
I'm glad that you kind of brought that up. I didn't even think about that, to be honest with you. For the longest part of my time, like professional life, I didn't really have mentors. I had people that like I aspired to be like, so like a role model, but not someone. I think what you mean by mentor is someone who sits down with you and kind of lets you behind the curtain. Hey, buddy, I see what you're doing. Let me show you a couple of the tricks of the trade that I've learned up until now. And for mentors, that word mentorship is so important to me now because it's not lost on me, the correlation between acquiring a great mentor and the changes in my life.
Absolutely.
I think
100%.
there have been 3 factors in my life journey that have changed the trajectory where like if I didn't have it, I would be a completely different person. When my mother died, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. When I married my wife and had my child, it changed my life. And when I started working for Matt Croak, it changed my life. Those 3 things, before those 3 things, I was a different guy. After them, I was a better man. And I owe a lot of my success to these things. It humbles me because it reminds me that I was a few choices away from not necessarily poverty, but being a lesser man.
Oh, completely. And I'm a lot the same way. Like I said, I'm not a college educated person. I grew up in the poorest of means that you could ever think about. And I've been able to change my family tree because of I came across the right people who believed enough in me to give me the opportunity to see behind the curtain. And that was a ton. I mean, that's anything from, like I said, from doing real estate to doing business to the fight game. I was a giant fan and was able to get behind the curtain of a lot of things. But yeah, if you don't have that in your day-to-day, that you could just go, hey, let me ask you a question. And somebody would go, sure, no problem, with no want nor recourse of their own. And there are people out there like that. And that's kind of why I've always been the guy who will, like, whenever you said, I want to sit down and talk to you about a podcast, I'll sit down and talk to you about anything you want. You want to know how I do real estate? You want to know how I've done the MMA thing? You want to know how I became what I've become, quote unquote? I'll tell you anything, and I'll tell you exactly how I did it. Because there's always room for it. There's always room for more. So
I find that there's a correlation between successful people and this. Fighting was always scarcity. It was always like there weren't enough seats at the table, and you were constantly trying to like get a better deal and get the better fights with the better promotions. And then when I escaped that into the realm of business, I always thought that it would be worse, not better. I have been blessed at finding people that have like opened the door for me, that have laid the groundwork for me and like kind of like shown me an example of the man that I can be. And I owe, I do believe this notion that you are a culmination of the people that have shaped you. Like the identity of Jeremy Johnson is not just like this person that made himself. It was maybe a mother, maybe a father, maybe a friend, maybe a partner, maybe what have you. Various actions throughout your life that have culminated to the man you are today. You said something earlier that I think constantly, and that is you changed the trajectory of your family. I think that one of the greatest attributes I have, the thing that makes me so mentally strong, is that the things that I'm doing today are because my parents sacrificed so much for me and my brother to have what we had.
Right.
And then if I can do the same, it'll propel my children into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
You know, and for me as a man, I firmly believe this. Your body of work is calculated at the time of your death. If you take at any point of your life, like where you're at today, it is not the full story.
Nope.
You don't have all the variables. You haven't done the full calculation. Only in your deathbed, when you're sitting there around the people that you love the most, will you know whether or not you were a net positive or negative to this world. And I think that that's something missing. I think in this world of like clout chasing and chase the bag at any means, you forget why you want all of these things. Why do you want the money? Why do you want the clout? Why do you want the admiration and respect and love from people? You want it so that you can build like your own castle and fill it with the people that you love. But if you don't have anyone you love, who are you going to fill this castle with?
Right. And you mentioned the idea of, you're chasing the bag, you're chasing the cash, you're doing all of this. Money is nothing more than a tool.
It is.
Money is nothing more than a tool. It doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, it truly doesn't mean anything. Did it mean that we could have all this cool stuff that's in the cameras? Did it mean that you can have a Pappy Van Winkle while we're sitting here?
It's a great whiskey.
It is. It's a good whiskey. But it's nothing more than a tool. And once you get past that thinking and think more towards, well, what can I do with it? What can I change with it? Because no matter what, it's all about what you can do, as you said, for your family, for your next generations, for whatever. We've been out on a couple occasions. You've met my kids and things like that. They are super humble kids. They're great. And, but I am glad that I was able to give them the next opportunity that they can come against. So, and I think that that's a big deal.
I also think it's a lost art. I look at a lot of these things that, not just like the red pill community, but like the influencers for young men today. And while I simultaneously have faith in the next generation, I think the Zoomers are a generation of kids that have grown up with exclusively the internet, a very volatile, malleable world, and they navigate it perfectly. I have faith in the future while simultaneously seeing the risks and just kind of thinking to myself, this cannot be what we value. This cannot be the things that we aspire to. It cannot be about the vain things. You said that money isn't everything. It's not, unless you don't have it. I cannot think of a better quote than this one. It is expensive being poor in America. It is. To be poor in America is expensive. When you have money, when you no longer have to finance things, when you can start looking at money the same way you look at a tool, like a hammer or a saw, that's, in my opinion,
100%
success.
Yes, but it's more of but you have to understand the end game. It's not just once you get to the point where your bills are paid, you're able to not have to deal with that. Then it becomes something else. And I agree with you, but it's expensive to be poor, completely.
I worry about that for multitudes of reasons.
I agree.
It's one of these things where,
because I was there.
yes, so was I. So was I. And I saw my parents and I saw the ones around me like bust their ass for the little that they could. But they lived honest lives. They did the best they could with the means they had. And I cherish those memories, and it makes me the man I am today.
Yeah.
You know, people can say a bunch of things about me. But one of the things that I truly believe this. They might say I'm brash, I'm cocky, I'm this, I'm that, or the other. But I think in my heart of hearts, one of the things they can say about me is that I'm fair. I've never done to anyone anything I don't expect them to do to me.
Yeah.
And I've never lied or deceived someone for personal gain. I walk this world the way I do simply because of the people that showed me how to walk it. And whether that's business, whether that's life, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they meld together every day. Back to the first point I said, your network is your net worth.
Yes.
How do these people like me? Because of the way I navigate this world. Yeah. It's not because I'm the smartest in the room. It's not because I'm the tallest or the best looking. It's because the things I say they can resonate with, and the things I say, I believe because this is how I was raised. I owe my existence to many people other than myself. So I'm very grateful for that. I wanted to bring you on this podcast for a multitude of reasons. I find you a genuinely fascinating individual.
Well, thank you.
On face value, you think Jeremy Johnson, the announcer for Shamrock FC.
Yeah.
Jeremy Johnson, owner of Uppercut Whiskey.
Yeah.
Jeremy Johnson, influencer / social media personality.
Yeah.
But I think people would be surprised and shocked at how many irons you have in the fire, how many moving parts you have. So that before we even get to your businesses or like how you got to where you're at, I want to know how you manage it all.
Number one, you have to have an amazing support system behind you. I have a truly amazing circle of people who are involved in what I do. It's very small, but whom it is there, and they help me out a ton. Producer Matt is a big person within...
Big shout out.
He's a big person within the whiskey. He's a big person within the barbecue sauce business. He's a big... in the other podcasts that I do. My girl has been one of the most amazing things that I've found is to have a backup system who doesn't get pissed at you whenever you're not home because you've got things to do. And, in my world of doing things, there isn't a what time are you starting and what time are you going to be home. There just isn't. And, today it was one of those, I had some things I had to do for a bar that I own over in Illinois. And it was like, all right, cool, we're done with that. Now let's go do this. Next, we're going to go do that. And so after we get done with this, I'm going to go do something else for a bit. And then I'll probably go home tonight. And then I'll do it all again tomorrow. So, but there is a ton, that's a lot of moving parts, but if you got to have that support system behind you.
Do you think that time management is a skill set on par with critical thinking?
Yes. I will be perfectly honest with you. I'm not great with time management. I have apparently such bad undiagnosed ADHD that I can just do it. And it's that I have to focus on one thing. This will get done. I jump to the next thing. This will get done. Whereas a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm going to start 27 things and I'll never finish them. And I'm not that person because once I see it and once I decide it, it's going to happen. I'll send my accountant a text at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, hey, I got this idea to do this, 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 and this. And by the time that she sends me a message back at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've already started the LLC. I've already bought the domain names. I've already done all this other stuff. And so then she's just like, all right, we'll just add it to the list. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's more just the idea of the skill set to be good at time management is great as long as you've got somebody else behind you who can tell you what day it is. Because and I don't want to sound wrong with this, but there are days that I don't know what day it is because days never change. There is no working for the weekend. It hit me today. I'm like, oh my God, it's Saturday already. Okay, cool.
For the record, we're recording this on a Saturday night at 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Could have been doing anything fun, but you decided to be here with
100%.
me.
This is great. But it's one of those that you lose track of what's what because it doesn't mean anything anymore. There isn't I'm not working for the weekend. I'm not out to, the only thing I need to know is when's the next MMA show that I got to do? When's the next meeting that I've got? When's the next podcast that I'm going to do? When's the next speaker, thing that I'm going to do? When's the next influencer or whatever? I hate that term, influencer. I hate that more than anything. But
why?
Because it's so in my day, whenever that all started, you were a sponsored something. I'm not here to influence. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who bought hair gel and whiskey because of me. For real. A lot of suits. Am I wrong?
No, you're not.
There's been a lot of suits sold because of me.
Ben Lawler loves you.
I bet he does. But I'm not influencing. I'm giving my opinion. And if you value what I say, I appreciate that. But, it's just not the right term to me anymore. Because to me, influencer is all of the, Instagram models who are trying to get you to follow them, and then all of a sudden they will throw out something else. And that's not me. I have always been, and I have turned down many a thing. I've turned down a few that I really, really regret because the money would have been amazing. But it's not me. So
what is that mental calculus for you, like between the monetary gain that you can have or the net good you can do? Because I believe entrepreneurship and capitalism in general is the vehicle in which humanity can ride and go for thousands of miles. If it was not for America, if it was not for your government, if it was not for your market, I would not be the man that I am today. I heard a quote that I resonate with to my core, and it said that America is a foundation to where you can be the best version of yourself.
Yes.
If I was back in Albania, I'm an Albanian American. I love my home country, but I would not be the man that I am today. I wouldn't have the opportunities. I wouldn't have anything, the same variables at play to be the man that I am today. So I have an immense respect and immense love for this country, like a true patriotism, if you will. And the reason I bring this up is I think one of the most fascinating things about you is your entrepreneurial mind, while simultaneously that seems to be something that is attacked on the daily.
Oh, yeah. From, you're always attacked from one angle or another. It's the taxes, it's this, it's that, it's the other. It's the idea that, in launching a whiskey brand, it took me 8 months to get through the paperwork to make it happen. Jesus. It wasn't about startup capital. It wasn't about making the actual product. It was the bureaucracy to make it happen. We're experiencing the same thing with the barbecue sauce now. It is the bureaucracy that does it. And I think that that's okay, that some of it is needed because of checks and balances and things like that.
Protection for the consumer.
Exactly.
I get it.
But there comes a time when you've got to think about, okay, it's the small business. It's the guys like me with the 10, 12, 15 employees who are keeping the world running. Whenever COVID hit, we were the ones who kept the world running. Literally at one point in time, like one of my other businesses, we were supplying computers to the St. Louis, which is where we're at. We're in the St. Louis area, to the St. Louis city school system because they didn't have anything to give their kids to go home. To do remote learning. To do remote learning. And so that was something that, if we could stop the red tape on some of that kind of stuff, I think that you would see even more people like me.
So are you saying that there's a room for the government to step in? Which, by the way, I agree with this. Like, I don't believe you have to have unfettered capitalism because it's an Ouroboros. Like, it's a snake almost eating its own tail, right? And if you have unfettered capitalism, you will eventually lead to monopolies that, in many aspects, supersede the power of government. But simultaneously, you can't have socialism because then you have no incentive for people to do great things.
You have, at that point in time, you have no want or desire to do anything.
Yeah. And by the way, we have, for those that don't know, in America, you have a mixed economy. We have a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of social reform. And I mean, what is social security if not socialism? So I'm fine with this balancing act between the two. But what I'm not for is, a lot of time legislation is a reaction to culture. So it's not like you can legislate your way into culture. You want to prohibit alcohol? How'd that one work out for you? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, culture will create the legislation that a populace wants to follow. And the reason I kind of fear some of the, like I said, I have faith in the future. I do. I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer. I think tomorrow will be better than today because I experience it every day. But that's on the micro level. On the macro level, I want everyone else to feel the way I do.
Right.
this optimism, this financial security. I do want that for everybody, but I also acknowledge that not everybody is like me or has my skill sets or this or that or the other.
Sure.
But I don't believe that they should, fall onto the ground and wither and die just because they're not. I think we can have a little bit of both of caring for our fellow man while simultaneously pillaring the ones that push society. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't work at an Amazon and demonize a Jeff Bezos. You can't be the one that wants to do the 9 to 5 and then bitch about the guy that created it. I'm sorry.
Right.
Either you accept it for what it is and live by its rules and play the game, so to speak, that's laid before you, or shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
I'm tired of it.
I have used the term "play the game" a lot, even with my kids. That's sometimes you got to play the game.
Do you ever play basketball and bitch that you have to dribble?
I mean, well, it'd be like me, bitching that I have to slam dunk. Let's face it, not going to happen.
Well, not with that attitude.
Exactly. So,
No, I bring that up. We're kind of going through a lot of topics at a short amount of time. But the reason I'm saying this is it's all culminating to one of the main drivers of this conversation, and that is I am a big proponent of a free and open market.
Yes.
I'm a big proponent of entrepreneurs who are willing to take on the risks, make the sacrifices, do the work, and I want to see them, if they are dumb and they make bad decisions, I will embrace their downfall as much as the next man.
Sure.
But if they succeed and they show intelligence and grit and all the things that are needed for a man to succeed in business, I want to propel them. I want to give them the credence that they deserve. I want to give them the respect that they deserve. The thing that drives me crazy more than anything today is that this demonization of successful people. It's like, how do you think they became successful? I'm not saying that some of them haven't inherited it. Of course they did. But even then, you have to give respect to their forefathers. I mean, you want to create a better life for your kids than you had. I think that's a common human characteristic.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody really wants.
So then how can you demonize someone who did that?
Believe me, I get that. Because, and there are times out there that people will be like that, and it's terrible. But, you can't be mad at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk because they
played the game better?
They took their whatever investment and made it into whatever the next. You can't, because just because they succeeded and they had a little bit of a leg up, that's okay. Take into, all right, how many jobs has Jeff Bezos created?
I want to say that Amazon might be the second. I don't know if it is. I would need to do this, but it might be the second or third highest employer in the country, second only or third only to the U.S. government.
Well, think about that then. So then everybody is against Jeff Bezos, but yet he employs a massive amount of people.
And creates a massive amount of wealth.
He created a mass amount of jobs for people. He has delivered something that people needed. And so you can't be mad at the guy because he took the risk. Let's say that he was going to make pencils. He's the one who bought the wood, bought the graphite, did all of the stuff, put the idea together, and then hired everyone else to make it while he went off and did whatever he wanted to do and flew to the moon or whatever it is that he does. You can't fault him for that. He put the ideas and the money into work to make it happen. Yes, Jeff Bezos is a multi-billionaire, but when you saw him, he started in his garage.
Dude, have you seen some of those early Amazon photos?
Exactly. How many of us have started I started in my 2-car garage with my tech business 15 years ago, right? I have a 18,000 square foot warehouse now that does all of my stuff. And it's all because I kept going. And people hit roadblocks, and I've hit a ton of roadblocks. Oh my God. I mean, as I said, producer Matt can attest with all of the stuff that we've went through with the barbecue sauce. Sometimes you just want to quit.
Dude.
But we didn't. And so now I look at it, if I stop, how many people am I affecting if I close my business? How many people am I affecting if I don't go into work every day and go strive to be the next big whatever? If I want the next big contract, if I want the next big fight, if I want the next big, whatever. I am affecting now so many lives because of the people that I employ, because of the people that I'm around, that I want to succeed not only for me, but for them. So that to me is, once people can kind of start to see that as a metric of where you can go, then I think that people would be a little bit better off. That it's not just all about your one person. It's not just about Jeff Bezos. It's not. Because I can tell you, people like him, people like Elon Musk, everyone may hate Elon Musk because of his political views, because of what he's done, because of his money, because of what he inherited, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? How many people sell Teslas? Sell the cars. How many people service them? How many people are there whenever they create all of the things that make that happen? That happened because of one guy. And I don't care if you say that he robbed it from somebody, he stole the name Tesla, he did whatever, but he made it work. And that's where we see people today who have issues with it. And that's why I think, going back to whole influencer culture, they're chasing it for them.
Yes.
And that's what it is. So.
And then that's the difference. I mean,
that was a way to bring that back around, though.
No, I love it. Dude, we're going to be bouncing around back and forth on a lot of topics. I eventually want to talk about some of the products that you have, but I want to have the philosophical stuff out of the way first, because
the products are easy. I'm not worried about those.
I know. I love what you said about the value add, the creation of, because I'll tell you from an anecdotal evidence. Up until a certain point in my life, it was all about the salary for me. How much money am I making? Because I want to make more money.
Sure. We all do.
Truth be told, if I made like $50,000 a year, I didn't have a girlfriend or I didn't have any responsibilities, I was playing video games, I was happy, Jeremy. 23, 24-year-old Arion was happy. The problem is I wanted more. And there are 7 deadly sins in this world. One of them is greed. But I would also argue that a healthy amount of sin is what makes this world go round. Without greed, without this want for more, I would have just stayed that solitary guy who was just playing video games, working his 9 to 5, chilling. But because I wanted a little bit more, I wanted a wife, I wanted kids, I wanted a family, and then all the responsibility that comes with that. You know what I mean?
And that is a massive responsibility once it hits.
No
one prepares men for that.
I agree.
That there is that much responsibility that you're like, oh God, what do I do now?
The key word in there being men, because I know a lot of people that don't take that responsibility honestly.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I love that topic, because one of the things I want to do with this podcast is not necessarily like propel my morality to people or how I think they should live life, but I want them to question the words that they use. Like, so when you say man, what do you mean by that? For me, Andrew Tate is such a polarizing figure for me, because like there are a lot of things that he says I can resonate with.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that he says that I don't resonate with. But one of the things that I fundamentally just cannot accept is this chase for wealth and aspiration for the sake of acquiring more wealth and aspiration. It's like you can have the Andrew Tate with morality, and that is a man. Someone who's willing to go out there and work the extra hours and make the value happen for the people around him that he feels responsible for, and create that castle and walks stoically amongst this world. Those men shape reality.
Exactly.
They change the trajectory of humanity. That's a man. The rest of us, we're boys walking amongst them.
Yeah. And it's... I get where you're going with kind of the Andrew Tate thing, but the thing that I don't understand about that type of thing is, okay, you got a Bugatti. Cool.
So what?
That's awesome. Then what happens? How many watches do you need?
Have you ever looked at your watch to tell time?
Yes, I do.
Damn.
I actually do.
What a functional man.
I don't take my phone. I like watches. I mean, that is one of my few vices, but and I use it all the time, but I don't like, I'm not about the idea of, all right, do I need another car? Do I need another this? Do I need another that? And it comes a point where that's why the whole influencer culture gets me, is that it's just.
Do you want some more?
Always. We're going to the uppercut now. Okay.
Well, you gave me the Pappy Van Winkle.
I mean, that's fair.
You brought gifts. I want to use them, and I appreciate it.
Well, every studio needs a good bottle for their fans. Thank you, sir. That's plenty. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I remember that smell.
I appreciate it. I'm a big whiskey guy.
Yeah, when you told me you were a whiskey guy when you started out, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good.
Cheers, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the pod. I I resonate with this topic for men because I had real men shape me.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that I'm like this, ideal guy. I am just a guy, sins like the rest of us, makes mistakes like the rest of us. But in my heart of hearts, my ideal, my goal in this life truly is to make the world, if I came in here at 0 and I leave with +1, then I was a net positive.
Yep.
And I can look around me and say like how much wealth I've acquired. I can't take it with me. I can look around me and say like how much family I've created, but they're going to outlive me. I simply want to take what I've inherited and create more with it and then bounce.
Yeah.
And I will be forgotten.
Everyone
it's not about
will.
legacy.
Everyone will.
Yeah, it's not about any of these vain things. It's more about, not to get super philosophical, Jeremy, but when my daughter was born, I started thinking a lot about life, religion, all these things that are not necessarily tied to the material world. And to be completely frank with you, my faith has been tested many times in my life. And I cannot stand here today and tell you that I believe in God. I don't. But what I can tell you is that I hope to God that he is there. And one of the reasons I say that is because there's a beauty to morality. If we lived forever, we would only worry about ourselves. Mm-hmm. But because we are finite, there's a joy in knowing that the things that we do on this earth can benefit the others for long after we've left.
Well, and actually, you and I have had that conversation outside of here. We met up at I believe it was your wife's birthday or something to that effect one night at a particular bar here in St. Louis, and
I forget what that was for, but I remember that you came up. That was a boss move. Appreciate that night.
It wasn't a boss move.
It was a boss move.
It wasn't. I mean, it's fine, but no, it's one of those that you've got to be able to do that because it is. It's finite, and there is so much more that you need to do, that you need to look at. The minute that I had kids, I lost my mind for a while of, okay, what do I do now? How do I make sure that they never have the issues that I did growing up? How do I take away all the bad stuff that came to me so that they never have to experience it and don't even know what it is? And, as your daughter gets older, you'll experience it even more. So my daughter was first, my son was second. I still to this day worry about my daughter more than my son every day of the week. So, and it is what it is. And my daughter's a little badass. She always has been. She's 23 years old now, which is crazy because even in the world that we've all known each other, combat sports, everybody knew her as a little person, a little kid. Same way with my son. Everybody knows him as a 5-year-old, and he's an 18, and he's working as a cut man now and shows without me. So, it's a crazy. So, but yeah, it's something that you'll never get over it. I'm sorry to tell you, even as they get older, you will never get over it. You too, Matt. Same way.
Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the U.S., you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. Matt actually has a great story about like how he ended up with 3 kids. He told me he was like, his wife wanted, so they had 1, and then like his wife wanted 2, and Matt was like, all right, but like we're ending at 2, like I'm not doing more than 2, and then boom, he was blessed with twins.
Hit the twins. Oh,
Matt's like, shut up. No, I'm glad you brought that up because in a lot of ways, if we have a title for this episode, it'll be like, it's got to be something about like real men or something like that, because I do believe that all of these things, to be a man, a real man, is a combination of responsibility, a combination of greed to want more and to create more. It's a combination of morality and stoicism. It's a combination of some sin and some like holy virtues. And I think being a woman is difficult in its own respects. But I also think that being a man, a real man, is also immensely difficult, because to walk this world and to balance all of these needs and wants and aspirations to do it properly is so immensely difficult. And this is why I have so much reverence for successful people, because I'm just on the come up. I'm 31 years young.
You are just a kid.
I am.
You are just a kid.
And
that's okay. But so you have a lot of time. You know, even me, and, you know, everybody freaks out when I tell them that I'm 50. You know, they're like...
Aging like wine.
I try. I really, really try. But, you know, I've still got time. And that's sometimes things that I got to sit back and go, okay, I don't have to do it all right now. I don't have to. Even though I have done that. But it's all because of the idea of chasing.
How do you fight that? Because I got to be honest with you, I feel like I do. I'm 31 and I feel like my time is limited. That I have to hit the ground running on everything that
you do. And
maybe it's my youth. Maybe I'm just...
It's tough. And I have always told myself, all right, I'm going to stop this whenever I hit 35. All right, well, I'll stop this when I hit 40. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll slow down when I hit 50. And then I'm like, no, hell with it. Let's just go. Let's just keep going. You know, it's something that I think that it's just innate in some people. And I think that you've got it. And I think that it's one of those that you're gonna run from the time that you wake up to the time it's all over. And that's okay, because there are still people like us out there who are going to do a lot of the stuff, and our kids are going to take over the next of what it's going to be, you know, because it's just the way the world works.
You spoke earlier about the value that these individuals are creating. We said Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk in the sense of, like, you know, they're the easy examples because they're the most relevant people. But it doesn't have to necessarily be the guy who owns like the biggest company. It can be your local provider of whatever insurance or whatever. They might have like 2 or 3 people underneath them, and they're creating jobs. I want to know what it felt like when you gave your like first paycheck. So like you made the money for yourself and that you were able to generate a paycheck. Okay, I want to be careful of the verbiage. Forgive me. You did not generate a paycheck for someone, but there was enough value in the work that was accumulated by various members where money could be distributed. How did that make you feel?
It's an amazing feeling to know that you have made it to that point.
Yeah.
Number 2, it's scary as all get out, because now I feel responsible. I feel responsible for everyone who comes into my circle to do things. From it being, so my tech business is warehouse manager. I think about him every day. Something, you know, is everything going right? Down to my guys who take things off of trucks. You know, I'm the guy I'll go out there with him every time. I've done out, went, driven, did the whole things. And I've always been worried every time then at that point in time, because I wanted to keep it going. And so it made me work harder, work for more things, because I knew now not only am I taking care of me, my family, them, their family now it's because of us. And if it doesn't matter if it's, you know, a minimum wage guy who's sweeping a warehouse, or Matt who's creating graphics for me, or, you know, anyone, I worry about them because I want to make sure that they're getting as much out of this as I am. Because like we started, nobody will care about your business more than you will, but you want to give them a reason to come back every day. You know, even down to like my bartenders, I want them to know that I care, that I am happy to help them. I want them to succeed. I want them to learn all the tricks that I did from all the years of what I've done. I want them to learn my whiskey knowledge, you know, because of all of the trainings and all of the dumb stuff that goes through my head at 2:00 in the morning. But I want them to experience that. And so once you give that first paycheck to somebody, you are then I'm 100% invested in them. So
as the individual.
Yeah. I know their kids. I had one of my guys the other day. He couldn't come in because he had his kids, but he needed something. His kids came in with them. I'm talking like little girls. They walked out with computers that day because they thought it was cool. They were playing with them. I'm like, you can keep them, no problem. You know, that kind of thing. So,
I think, you know, when you get to a certain level, notions like that are difficult because at the micro level, you can upkeep 10 employees, let's say. Like there's 10 people around you. They all do some sort of function or some sort of work in your endeavor. And it's kind of easy to maintain those relationships. And it's one of those things that I do understand the criticism of like, how could you possibly do layoffs or make these decisions that, hurt so many people? A part of that is anonymity, because when you get to a certain level,
Right.
it's difficult to have that. But a part of it is also like a utilitarian approach. It's like, if I don't do this layoff, if I don't, cut some of the excess spend, the whole ship will go down. And I think sometimes and this is easy for me to say because I've never been laid off. I've never been fired, quote unquote. So I do acknowledge that there's some hypocrisy to my words, but I don't think that I'm incorrect with my thought. I just haven't experienced it. Hopefully never, probably yet.
Yeah.
And that is, when you work for these bigger companies, when you are employee 7945, it's like, you get lost in the sauce, so to speak. And it's like, when things happen to you, it's not necessarily like an infraction on an individual who is out there to slight you or to cause you harm. It is a purely logical decision made with variables presented that are intended to generate the most amount of save for the most amount of people. And I use these verbs verbiage. Not verbs, but verbiage. I use these words precisely because I want to try to articulate this thought process as coherently as I can. And that is, business, at least to my short tenure, has been more about people, more about skill sets, more about drive and care than it has been about money, than it has been about bureaucracy. It's the people.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of people who they just talk about the money end of it, because that's not all that it is, and it never will be. No matter what no matter what level you get to, it's not always going to be that. It's always going to be about, there are always constant factors. There's always going to be the idea of family, providing, that kind of thing. And if you don't do it for one thing, you're going to do it for the next. It's going to be one job, it's going to be the next job, it's going to be on your own. But it all comes down to, you said you were chasing the dollar as a younger guy. At some point in time, though, that stopped, and it did, because you did what you needed to do, but you also found that doesn't give you all of the good feels just because if you went out and made $100,000, I'm happy for you. It's perfect. But did the $100,000 make you happy? Did it make your family happy? Did it make somebody around you happy? Were you able to help somebody else? And everyone, to some extent, is an employer of others, okay? If you don't mow your own grass, you're an employer of others. If you have someone who cleans up after your dog, you're an employer of others. If you pay your kids to wash the dishes in the sink, you are an employer of others. No matter what, everyone is somebody giving someone else a job. So,
at what age would you say that you've kind of developed this skill set or this mentality for entrepreneurship? Because for me personally, I was not born with it, or at least I don't think I was.
I was.
Really?
Yeah, I was. And the reason being is so my parents divorced very early. I don't ever remember them together.
I'm sorry.
No, it made me what I am today, because I chased beyond because of it. Everybody who it was, so my dad owned a business and he was gone all the time with it. So I figured that was probably okay. My mom later in things, started a business, did pretty well, sold out and retired. My dad unfortunately passed away very early, so I never really got it, like 43. So I've outlived him and my grandfather, which was pretty crazy. But so it was more of that I have always seen it that way, and that I always was involved somehow. My dad actually he had a company that did carnival games and casino nights for corporate things.
Oh, shit.
So I play blackjack really, really well because I've been doing it since I was 10 years old. But I also was around it because I worked for him up until he died. And then there was a bunch that happened at the end of that. And everybody's like, oh, so you inherited all this money? No, I didn't get anything. My mom worked in like the hair business. You know, she was like a hairstylist, which is why I'm so freaked out about my hair all the time.
You have a fantastic haircut, by the way.
I appreciate that. I get a haircut once a week.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Absolutely.
You're an employer of others.
I am an employer of others. Literally, we can go into that later, but that's how the whole Jeremy Johnson's hair of the MMA world started. But my mom started a hair salon down on Laclede's Landing whenever it was big and running, and she did very well for herself, and she retired a few years ago, and now I taught her how to do real estate. So she owns some houses and does that kind of thing. But it's more of everyone is an employer of others at some level. At some level. Because, I know probably everybody in here mows their grass except for me. But at some point in time, you're going to look at it and go, man, I really don't want to do that. All right, the kid down the street's I'm going to pay him $30 and he's going to cut my grass for me. Perfect.
I think there's also a beauty to that because then it kind of instills, opportunities are only available if someone's willing to provide them. Yep. So it's like this kid who might be 11, Jeremy comes down and says, hey, mow my grass, I'll give you $30, $40, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Now this kid might learn the attributes of a hard day's work.
Yes.
Maybe they think to themselves like, hey, if I do Jeremy's lawn, maybe like if I do 3 or 4 more lawns, like I can make enough money to do this thing that I want to do or what have you. And it kind of gets the hamster wheels of life turning, in my opinion. And
then what did you do? You just mentored somebody. That's how our conference all goes back around. So
I find this whole conversation fascinating because it's like I said before, I don't think there's any difference between not any difference, but I think the worlds between the internal and external do meld. Business and people meld. Spiritual and physical meld. And one of the things I like about this podcast, or one of the reasons I do this, is because I want to try to look at things from a different perspective. And from this perspective, we've only attributed great things to capitalism and great things to entrepreneurship, but there is a dark side to it as well. And I feel like the difference between good and bad is too much, right? Like enough greed to create value can be good, but too much greed for few, well, then we'll take value from the greater good. And
it sours the name.
Yes.
It makes entrepreneur a bad word. It makes business owner a bad word. And we're not all that person. Not everybody is out to just quote unquote screw over the little guy. They're not. So
they were usually, most often, they were at some point the little guy.
Exactly. I had nothing. I lived in a trailer till I was 17 years old. And I thought every day on how I was going to get out. And I took that motivation and I found people to help me, going back to the mentors, and it just continued to grow from there. So, yeah, I mean, not everyone is bad and everyone came from something. I don't care if you were left $1 million from your father, you still had to do something with it.
I agree.
So
it's easy to piss away an inheritance. It's hard to create one.
Exactly.
It's also easy to piss away an inheritance.
That it is.
One of the things you said earlier, and I don't mean to caveat too much, but it was, I want to make sure I talk about it before I let it slip in the conversation.
Okay.
You said that now you're at an age where you've essentially outlived your father's age. Mm-hmm. Navigate that for me. How did that feel?
It's very, very weird.
Do you try to compare yourself to him? Meaning,
I didn't.
When you were at 43.
Oh, at 43, I thought I was done. Like I had wills, I had everything done.
Because of that?
Yeah, because of that.
Yeah.
There are specific things that led to my father's passing.
Lifestyle choices?
Yeah.
Okay.
You live fast, things happen.
I feel you.
So, but it's one of those that I have accepted the fact that it's not me and that I wasn't that guy, because for a long time I did. I did think that was a thing. And I was hoping to break the curse. You know what I mean? And I think I have. But, and I've had a few close brushes. I mean, I was in a car accident in Louisville, Kentucky that not a lot of people in the fight family know about that almost killed me, apparently. I don't remember any of it. But so I've gotten past it. But you sit back and you're like, okay, I only got a finite time because I don't have a long history in this. And so you want to do a lot. And I think that leads to some of the reasons why I've done what I've done. Because if I don't do it today, tomorrow may not be here. Does that make sense?
I cannot explain to you how much that resonates with me.
Yeah.
I am now at 31, the age my mother was when she found out she had breast cancer.
I gotcha.
And I don't, the nuance in that is not lost on me in the sense of like, there's a correlation between this runner's mentality of like, I gotta get it done. I gotta do the thing. I gotta take the risk because my mother died at 41, so your father died at 43. And one of the things I constantly think to myself is, okay, so at 31, she found out she had cancer. And from 31 to 41, she navigated that world. In my opinion, there's no perfect human being on this planet. My mom was the closest fucking thing to it.
Yeah.
And it's not bias.
No,
it's
100%.
reality.
Yeah, I get you.
But it makes me think of like, I've taken 31 years to get to where I'm at today. Mm-hmm. A lot of that was structural. Like, you're 5. How much value are you going to provide as a 6-year-old, right? But after the age of 23, 22, I went to school, got my degree. And then since like 22, it's been like only value adds. What can I do to increase the value that I can put forth? What can I create? What can I create that can create things unto itself?
Sure.
And I mean that in the sense of business, right? Like you make a business that will make a product, and maybe that product creates value. Hopefully it creates value. Maybe it doesn't. Or a skill or a service, what have you. But one of the things that does kind of, it's a subconscious conscious, because I know it's there, but it's in the back of my head. And it's that my mom found out that she could possibly die at 31. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here with like perfectly good health. What am I doing with it?
Right.
Maybe it's
Completely.
imposter syndrome?
Or, yeah. And imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I get that a lot. But the thing that I have kind of, as I've gotten through it, is you've got to realize that you weren't that person. You weren't the idea of, unfortunately, in my case, I haven't done, I may have done the business side. I may do the crazy nights of no sleep and this and that, but I didn't do everything that caused the problems. And unfortunately, with your mother, it's a terrible genetic thing that can happen.
Yeah.
And it's not. You have to get back past the point that, okay, I'm not that person. I'm not. It's not necessarily going to be that thing. And it took me a good few years though to get past the time. Like, I used to think every year whenever a birthday hit, I'm like, oh, shit, is this the last one? So.
Can I tell you something dark?
Hit me.
I don't want to lose it.
Okay.
Why? Because it propels me. I cannot explain to you the fire I have underneath me.
Okay.
I have urges. I have wants and needs.
Sure.
That, like, I can stand here and tell you that if my mom was alive today, I would not be the man that I am today. It was her death that taught me so much about myself, and that in the most, I don't want to sound morbid.
No.
But in a dark way, created an immense light in my life. The way I navigate my life as a father is because of the way she navigated her life as a woman. Sorry. It's weird because my patriarchy comes from the strongest source of love that I got, and it was my matriarchy, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to lose this thought of like, my mom was 31, I am 31. She found out she had breast cancer at my age. What am I doing with my life? Am I here to chase the 9 to 5? There's nothing wrong with that, but is that what I'm here for? If it is, I have to acknowledge it.
Right.
I have to accept it, and I have to navigate that world. But if it's not, then I also have to acknowledge it. I also have to move on. Well, then what does that look like if I'm not going to chase the 9 to 5? What does that look like? How can I add value to the world? How can I take a 0 and make it a +1? That is what drives me to no else.
And I get that. I do get that.
I used to think it was fighting. I used to think it was fighting because I was competitive. And I used to think that it was because of, I'm a fighter, I want to be the best in the world. And when I lost fighting, I genuinely, Jeremy, thought that there would be a part of me that died. I have never in my life felt more alive.
I bet. Because that idea is gone. And it's no longer what's in the back of your head going, I got to be the best. 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 All right, well, now I know, okay, maybe not. But
I'll be the best version of me.
What's next?
Yes.
What do I get to be the best at next? And I am one of the kind of people who I will do something to the nth degree. I will be as good as I can at it, whether it be fighting, commentating, working a yo-yo, doesn't matter. I want to be the best at it, okay? And when I'm done being the best at it, I'm ready to move to the next thing.
What is that next thing?
God, at this point, I don't know. I have so
many irons in the fire.
Well, I'm getting older, so I don't know quite how much more do I want. Now, I am, and I hate to say that it's this late in the game, but I am focused more now on being like the best father, the best partner, the best that, because I wasn't in the past because I was always chasing the next thing to make sure that they were good.
Ooh.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And you lose a bit of it in yourself whenever you start to, all right, I want to make sure that everything is good for everybody else. Well, now everything's okay for everybody else. And now I want to focus on being, and it's, I'm hopeful that it's not too late. My kids still like me, which is good. So,
better than most.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I have a great girl. Everything is good that route. And so, I'm now trying to be better at that. And it comes with the same things. It comes with, all right, I want to make sure that they have everything that they ever want and need, that, if they, but I want to be there. You know what I mean? And so I've actually kind of slowed down some things so I could be there. And I never missed a judo tournament for them. I coached both my kids in judo. I never, I tried very hard not to miss, concert recitals, things of that nature. But there comes a time when you do. I have been the commentator for Shamrock FC for 10 years now. I have never missed a show. I have missed some of my family stuff because of it, but I never missed a show in that because I thought it was going to get me somewhere to the next level. And so now I am more kind of focused on, all right, well, maybe I don't need to go to this meeting if I have to go do something, or they want to do something. So I've kind of changed up that way because the next is, I don't know how much more stuff that I need to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more stuff that I need. I have a big thing now of I'm not a stuff person anymore. And that just comes in time and age. So
you were asking me earlier in that, by the way, I resonate with a bunch of what you just said.
Okay.
To the core. Nothing more than when you were essentially like you're in real time mentally weighing. I think as a man, truly, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Completely.
You will always fall short because it's either like, how much value can I provide for my family? But that value is directly tied to the amount of time that you need to spend on that value.
Yes.
No one's going to pay you to do nothing.
No.
And if you want to make a better life for your family, you're going to have to sacrifice time. And I think...
And I don't think people know that enough anymore.
I agree.
I think that was an idea that has long passed. And call me old-fashioned, call me whatever, but, when I was married, my ex-wife never had to work because she stayed home with the kids, and that was what I wanted, and so that was a big plus to me because they got to be...
You provided.
Exactly. And
so,
it
made you feel like a man.
Yes. And now, I may not be married anymore, but I have, like I said, I have an amazing girl, and it's the same way. The kids love her to death, but now it's more of the idea that I can do maybe less to do things monetarily, work-wise, whatever you want to look at it as. And now I can do more to kind of bring more value to them as I've gotten older. So
I resonate with what you're saying about like it is like a lost...
It's a lost art.
It's a lost art, but I don't think it has to be because you have to acknowledge it. As a man, you are forever going to balance two things.
Yes.
being a father and being a provider, or being a husband, like a father, a provider, a friend, a spouse, what have you,
Right.
and the pillar of the home. And that's why I have such an affinity for guys that can balance it, because it is so hard. If you work 100 hours a week or 200 hours a week, or however many hours there are to work in a week, you're going to have to give away time for the judo classes, for the soccer practices, or whatever it is that your kids are doing. And then it's like, Jeremy's out making a deal or starting a business or whatever, so he missed the recital, he missed this, that, or the other. He's a neglectful father, or he's not there enough, but, the house is paid for, the bills are taken care of, like all of the framework for the kids to be raised not wanting are there. Simultaneously, you could be at every practice, at every little thing every action that the kids need, but that is an opportunity missed. That is a deal that you could have made. That is even if you're just working the 9 to 5, that's an interview you could have gone to for a better gig or a better job. And I feel like as a man, like, you're just damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't make enough money, you should have made more. If you're not there enough, you should have been there more. If you're there too much, you could have made more money. If you're making so much money, you're never there. It's like, dude, how do I balance this?
And you asked me, how do I can't tell you. You have to have, like I said in the beginning, you have to have an amazing support system.
Yes.
And that is one of the biggest things that I can preach, is you have to have an amazing support system. So be happy with, the fact that if your wife is good with, you here tonight instead of being home with the kids on a Friday night, that's awesome. That's perfect. If you're, looking at what this becomes, because this will become something, there is no hope to it. This will become something. And, no matter what it is, the more you work at it and the harder that you go, it will become something. Down to our MMA Bourbon podcast is becoming something. When I did that MMA show 15 years ago, we'll say. I mean, I've been around this business a long time. I've been around MMA a long, long time. It became something. It became a gigantic, not gigantic moneymaker, but it became something that provided. It became something that was valued by people. It was something that was, we at that time were all over the internet. I mean, we did massive numbers. I was doing 15,000 downloads at a point, which is really good in the podcasting world.
Back when people were actually downloading.
Exactly. When it was a real thing, there wasn't just streaming platforms at the time. And so it was, you got to work in between the two. And it's just, you can feel it sometimes whenever you need to back off, and sometimes you can't. And hopefully your support system behind you will tell you. So,
have you ever felt defeated by it?
Oh God, all the time. I feel defeated weekly. I literally walked into my warehouse the other day and I go, man, we are not doing good. There's only this, that, and the other. And my warehouse manager looked at me and goes, did you go look at our, logistics board or when things come in? He's like, there's X amount of things that are going to be here in the next 2 weeks. What are you even talking about? Yeah. Whenever you miss a podcast a couple of times, you're like, God damn it, what am I doing wrong? Or in the fight game, I go back and I watch everything I have ever commentated, everything that I have ever announced, and I go through it and I pick out what I did wrong every time.
Hyperanalyze yourself?
To the point that I can tell you so your last fight against Austin Bashi, I finished that night. I had your bottle of whiskey in your glass in my bag. I felt like shit. I went home and I watched it on the way home from the casino to figure out if I could have said anything better that I went through that fight. Every time. Every time. And I can come back with notes every time of what was wrong. But I don't watch the shit that sounds good. Ever. Because the good stuff is great. Cool. It was there. It was good. But what can we do to make it better? So.
Can you over-criticize yourself?
Oh, God, yeah. But I think that's more towards the imposter syndrome that you talked about. Like, I'm not good enough to be here anyway. Why am I doing this? And I get that a lot. I've had a couple of opportunities to do some bigger shows, and I've done some bigger things, and it's been very cool. But I have always kind of sat back and went, why am I having dinner with Oscar De La Hoya? How did I get here? I'm in an elevator with Bernard Hopkins at one point in time, and he knows who I am. I was at a boxing match, and Don King says, hey, Jeremy, what's going on? I'm like, how in the hell did I get here? And that's a gigantic thing that it will continue all the time. So, but being hypercritical, it just gets you. It is what it is, and it's something I've never been able to get past. Because I will sit back and remember every tongue-tied moment that I've had on broadcasting, every dumb thing that I've said on radio, because when I was on radio, that was a thing. And I never swore, though. I never, ever said a curse word.
You're a better man than I.
Never said a curse word on the radio. So, but, yeah, it will always be there. So
I want to thank you for two things. Number one, being on the podcast. Number two, going down this philosophical.
Yeah, because I don't know if this is the way that you wanted to go, but I mean, we'll make it work.
The goal for this podcast is have a conversation and see where it goes. I'm not really opposed to having any sort of conversation. I'm an open book in my life. I have nothing in my life that I have done. I'm super, what would be the word, like scared to show off or regret. I have very few regrets in my life, right? Yeah. So for that reason,
and even your regrets lead you to something that's better.
I've always turned lemons into lemonade.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I want to thank you for one, being on the podcast, and two, going down this, because I'm sure you had an idea of what this podcast would be.
Oh yeah.
And this might be slightly different from what you thought it would be.
This was a lot different than where I thought we were going to go.
Trust me, we're gonna turn it around.
But I'm absolutely fine with this, because I have said a few things on this one that I've never said on any other show. So, which is cool.
The goal is value, and not value in the sense of entertainment, the value in the sense of value.
Sure, yeah, I get you.
I think you've said things so far that people will watch this and go, I know exactly what he means. And I hope that is the case.
Well, and me too, because like I said, it's all about the idea that you want the next generation, or you want the next person, or the next person who wants to start a podcast, start a business, start this, start that, to have some idea of, it's okay, because people are going to tell you it's the dumbest thing. Your idea was stupid. But I have always said, would you take advice on investing or starting something from someone who's never done it?
Absolutely.
That's why I have a problem with like some college and shit. But anyway.
When I say absolutely, I mean like I know exactly the thought you're trying to portray, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would rather take someone who's done it 100 times and failed, because at least I know that everything he's saying, I should do the opposite, right?
Exactly.
But we had a saying in fighting that's like, I would take the guy that's had one fight and like 6 months of training over the guy who's trained for 10 years, because the guy who's been in one fight knows more. Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say that the thought behind that of like theory versus application expands to various aspects of life.
Sure.
None more than business. How do you know how to be a successful businessman? A couple failures.
And there have been tons.
And I want to touch on that, because you do, and you have your hand in many projects. Mm-hmm. The conversations that we've had have honestly fascinated me, and also surprised me, because I remember when we first had our first conversation, it was an interview for you interviewing me for like my fight card on a fight, my first Shamrock fight as an amateur. And I thought to myself, this is just the commentator guy. And since then, I've learned that you're a family man, you care about your children, you're an entrepreneur, you're a businessman, very savvy with finance, very savvy with logistics and the inner workings of business, simultaneously very cognizant of social trends, the technology used before and after, and how to generate value on you, the individual. I find you immensely intellectual. The conversations we've had have been very beneficial to my life, whether you've known it or not. And you've parted with me wisdom. When you talk, Jeremy, I listen. And that is the greatest compliment I can give a man, or anyone, because there's a lot of people that talk to me. There's a lot of people I don't fucking listen to.
Yeah. That is a huge compliment. And I had another podcaster once who he told me that, he says, I've never had anyone who sat down with me and said, when we were talking, because it was at a bar one night in Kansas City, and he's like, man, I've always wanted to do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. And we started talking, and he says no one has ever taken him seriously. No one ever sat down and really road mapped it for him. And I mean, we had a 30-minute conversation. And then at one point in time, he actually got to go do what he wanted to do because he followed what we talked about. And to me, that's the biggest compliment, is that if I imparted something to you by what I had to say and what I've done, then everything I've done has been good. Because if me talking to you about the fights, or me talking to you about business, or me talking to you about anything, and you took something from it, I'm happy. Then I feel like I have done something. I've left something else.
I love that. I love that thought. To navigate this conversation to a slightly less, serious topic, maybe something a little bit more light. I actually wanted to talk to you about how difficult it is. I have a brief stint in it. Okay. I have some coals in the fire, but you obviously have more established than I am, older, wiser. I'm old. All the accolades.
Yes.
And I bow when bowing is necessary. I just want to know, what was your first business like? What was starting that? What were the feelings there? And what was the last one like? The compare and contrast. If you were to do a Venn diagram of business one, the most recent endeavor I have, what are some of the things you've learned? What are some of the mistakes you've made? Do you often look back and go, Jesus Christ, what was I thinking?
Number one, I've never been asked that question. Okay. That is the coolest. That is one of the coolest questions I've been asked on a business in anything like that. Okay, so my first business, and it'll take just a little bit of a setup.
Of course.
So I was a musician at one point in time. I have played all over the country playing music. I was a touring musician. I have done studio work. I have been in everywhere from LA to Nashville. And I realized at a very young age that the guy who makes the most money is the guy that runs the sound and the lights. So what I would do is I bought all of the equipment and I started to do sound and lighting for other people when I wasn't on the road. And I did it in a couple of bars, and then I kind of expanded. I bought another set. So I had one at a nightclub and one on the road with people. And I did that for about 4 years. And I sold the company, which was very cool. But I was 21, 22 years old when I did it. Oh my God,
young.
Yeah.
A baby.
But I was playing music so much, and I saw that, well, if I could play, plus I rented they were using my equipment, I got paid twice. I'll take that. So there is something about the idea of being young and starting something that it's like first love. It's like that. Now it's more like, okay, it's very methodical, because once you have the formula down, because no matter what you're going to do, a lot of it is basically the same. A lot of it is basic setups that are the same. But there is something just about, I remember, the first time I got 3 checks in one night, because I had 2 systems out. I was playing one night, and so I got paid to play guitar. I got paid because I had the sound guy and the equipment, and then I got paid because I was at another nightclub. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And so it was really you akin it to first love, for real. But as it goes on, it gets to be more methodical and more approached, because I did a very bad deal in 2007, right around the real estate crash time. And I lost almost everything. But it was it still becomes, that was one of the biggest learning experiences I've ever had. But it still becomes the idea that it's very methodical. And if you don't believe your own hype and you don't go off of anything other than the numbers, it should all work out. So when you take out the first love feel about a startup of something, it's a whole other animal. And it becomes, I don't want to say robotic, but there is a robotic element to it. I'm looking at right now I'm looking at an Airbnb property just as something new, but it still kind of works all the same way. The numbers kind of work out. You're a finance guy. You understand the numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie no matter what it is. And
But
so
they don't tell the whole story.
they don't tell the whole story, but they never lie. And so as long as you understand that those are never lying to you, the rest will fall into place.
You said that before in '07 that you lost almost everything.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want the details of what happened. I
Oh,
want the mentality thereof.
Okay.
Because you're a kid who grew up from humble beginnings
Oh, yeah.
to the man that you are today.
Mhm.
But there was a peak before the peak.
Oh, yeah. And there will
Walk me
always
through
be.
that.
There will always be peaks and valleys, but I had a valley that hit like a truck. I in
'07, how old are you before we continue? Like 30?
30-ish,
30-ish, okay.
30-ish, yeah.
So about my age now.
Yeah, about your age now, I think. So I was involved in a real estate deal, and I bought a property thinking that it was going to be the next cool loft
Commercial or
apartments.
residential?
I bought a commercial property, but at
Jeremy,
the
You got some
time,
balls on you at 31, brother.
I had already owned 4.
Oh, Jesus. Oh,
So
my God.
so I had already owned 4 commercial properties and 10 residentials at that time. So I had done a leverage deal of everything, and I got into a property, and then the market crash came.
For those that don't,
with-
forgive me, Jeremy.
Go
For
ahead.
those that don't understand the terminology, leverage means you are getting into something with money that you're not upfronting. It is upfronted by a financial institution, somebody else, what have you. So basically, when Jeremy says he's leveraging this, he is doing a thing without his money.
Right.
And the collateral that he has to put up front in order for someone to give him the capital that he needs in order to pursue the endeavor could very well be the assets that he has under his portfolio.
And you are absolutely right. And so I had at the time, and this will be the only time that I ever mention numbers on the show, but it lends to the story. I had about $1.5 million in real estate at 31. And I had leveraged every bit of it to launch a commercial building with loft apartments in it. And it was a doomed deal from day one. And I knew it.
Know it.
I knew it. I felt like I got to the point, and this is why I tell everybody, don't believe your own hype. I believed my own hype at the time that I could do it. And even though the numbers were wrong, I went ahead with it. I actually I actually tried to get out of it at the end of it, and I couldn't get out of it without getting sued. And so I went through with it. And I kept trying to make it, and it just did not work. And the end of it, like I said, I lost pretty much everything with it other than the house that I lived in.
Jesus.
And so lost about $1.2 million worth of property at the time. But here's the thing. It ebbs and flows. And that was a really, really big dip. But it taught me enough to never deal with the idea of gut feelings and thinking that I'm something I'm not, just because I had made all this other stuff work. I had some great commercial properties. I had some amazing houses. And it was, at 31 years old, I couldn't have asked for anything better, especially coming from my background. And when it was gone, it was like, okay, it's gone. And I remember literally the next day I'm going, okay, what are we going to do now? And I sat back. I took about a week to sulk and get my head straight. And I took another week and I started to plan. And I'm like, okay, here's where we're going to do the next thing. And here's what I think we should do. And I've always been a technology guy. I'm like, okay, so we can take this and we can kind of make things happen this way. I know enough things. I've got a few friends in the business. We can make some things happen. And you just have to kind of take it from there, and you either A, sulk so much, fall into a deep depression, or you figure out what you're going to do. And at that point in time, my daughter was young, very young. She went to preschool and told everybody that her daddy bought her a building with an elevator she could play in. So she literally just rode up and down the building in the elevator when we had it. And I was like, okay, we're going to make the next thing happen. And that's all it took. And I never looked back, and I would never – I now watch every deal that I do, though, so hard that because every day it reminds me. Every day.
That is so powerful in me, Jeremy. I never knew this story about you.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever we've had conversations, I felt like it's been honestly like a circle jerk between you and I, because we've only ever talked about the things that succeeded.
Sure.
Today, I've told you more of my failures than I think you've known, and I can tell you for certain you've told me more of your failures than I've known.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that.
Of course.
I will also say that this correlates with every other successful guy I know. Mm-hmm. The thought of like these guys that just, kind of navigate this world and never make any mistakes and all that. I can't tell you how many of the people that I look up to and that I respect tell me constantly, Arion, you have no idea how much shit I've eaten in my life.
Absolutely.
You look at the golden plate, you didn't see the appetizer.
100%. You never saw what brought us here.
Exactly.
And there is a lot that, and there is more along the way. There's always been things that happen. And it's okay. It's okay to fail. If you don't take and you don't learn from your failures, that's the bad part. But to fail is not wrong. Look at, dumb example, but President Lincoln failed 4 times running for president. Failed at every business he ever tried. But he finally made it. Because no matter what you do, it's never going to just be shot to the top. It's never going to be that. That's not how life works, and it's not. I don't care what anybody says. Jeff Bezos has never not failed. Elon Musk has never not failed. They may not talk about it, but everyone who has been anything has failed. And if they haven't, then they're lying. So,
I agree 100%.
And you have to fail. You have to fail. You learn so much in failure. You do.
Can I? It's funny because we're on a podcast, so I was sitting here thinking, like, can I tell you something? But I'm telling everybody something. There is a deep. I am anybody that knows me as the overly confident guy.
Sure.
When have I ever shown you an ounce of like a bit of me that doesn't believe in me? I can't tell you how many times I failed at so many aspects of my life that I truly thought for the longest time that I was faking it until I made it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until recently when I realized I was looking to my left, I was looking to my right, and I was like, oh my God, I was never a failure.
Nope.
I was never faking it until I made it. I was always on the growth.
Sure.
And at times there were just lessons that cost me more than others. But I learned from them, and I grew from it.
And that's what it's all about. If you can take it and you can learn from it, it was never a bad thing.
I'm glad you said that, Jeremy. I really am. I battle with these things constantly. And I know that I'm a young guy and that I try my hardest to be a glass half full kind of guy.
Sure.
And look for the opportunities and the things. But I'd be lying to you if I told you there aren't some days where I wake up and I go, Jesus, it would be nice to just, when you said you wanted to run away from some things, I feel that constantly.
Completely.
And I used to think that was like a, maybe I'm not as strong as I thought I am.
It's a weakness.
It's not
a weakness.
Yes.
It's not a weakness, though. Everyone wakes up on days and are like, maybe this just isn't for me. Yes. Maybe whatever I'm doing just isn't for me.
You want to quit.
Yeah, whether it's fighting, whether it's commentating, whether it's, going to your 9 to 5. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not really supposed to be here. But it's one of those that you just have to deal with that feeling and move on every day.
Easier said than done, but I agree. Easier said than done, but I agree. I find you to be a breath of fresh air because you simultaneously have a paradigm to you that is something I've seen before, while simultaneously I feel like every time I've had a conversation with you, I see a different aspect of you.
There's a lot to me, man. I've done a lot of stuff, and it's why every time I do one of these, I preface everything I say with, "I'm not lying to you. That really happened." It may sound crazy, but it really happened. So
No, I appreciate it.
I have done some weird, crazy shit.
Transparency is I used to think of transparency as like something that people do because they have to. Now I realize, no, they never have to do it. And it's actually an accolade. It's a characteristic. Like, I am okay with being transparent because there's an avenue which I've walked my life that I'm okay with you seeing. So there's a respect to be earned by transparency. And you have been very transparent with me. And it's actually, if I may, 2 reasons why I invited you on the podcast. 1, I find you fascinating. I think you're an intellectual person. I enjoy the conversation. Number 2, you've told me more in the last year and a half than I think we've told each other in the last 7 that we've known each other.
Very true. Yeah, very true.
So I appreciate that. And I want you to know that I, as an individual, have seen it, valued it, and...
Well, good. That makes me happy.
Uppercut Whiskey.
Yes.
First of all,
Okay.
if I may,
Yes.
marketing... The greatest name of a whiskey I can fucking think of. Uppercut is amazing. Walk me through that. Walk me through wanting to get into whiskey. I think I have my ideas,
All right.
but the name as well.
So what do you think?
Well, obviously you're a whiskey connoisseur. You've been engrossed in it, and you're passionate about it. Maybe there's like a niche that you thought wasn't being fulfilled because you're not like. When I say like a connoisseur, I don't mean like, oh, this guy goes out and drinks. I mean, you know shit about whiskey, right?
Yeah.
And I even go, okay, Jeremy, like, relax, brother. I'm
Well, yeah, even the show that producer Matt and I do, it goes deep into the world of whiskey.
well,
but,
MMA
yeah.
Bourbon Society.
Yeah,
And in my opinion, they're two in the same because you've created a product and you've also created a media source to, in essence, you don't promote the product. I actually love the way you do MMA Bourbon Society because you give more cadence and more spotlight to the whiskeys that you're perusing or you're kind of debating whether it's...
Well, the MMA Bourbon Society was a great joke one night, and that's how that started. Jimmy Craig and I were at a bar here in St. Louis, a whiskey bar in St. Louis, and we all posted we were there, and we had 40, 50, 60 people say something on all of them. And I said, man, you know what? We could write that we were having a ham sandwich, and people would comment. And I said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to make it just a joke appreciation society of MMA and whiskey. And we were half crocked at this time. And they all went, yeah, this is a great idea. There was no show involved. There was no nothing to it. And we put out a post that said, a meeting of the MMA Bourbon Appreciation Society is in session. And within 10 minutes, we had 100 people. They're like, how do I join? And I'm like, oh my God, we've got something with this idea. Here. And so that's how the podcast started. And I jumped in with Matt, Jimmy, and Craig.
Did you start the whiskey first or the podcast?
The whiskey was...
So Uppercut Whiskey first?
Was the whiskey first, Matt? Was it? Yeah, I thought so. Because that was... Uppercut Whiskey is actually about 5 years, 6 years in the making. And I was home alone one night at about 1 o'clock in the morning. I had just had a few pours, too many. And I thought, you know what? I know enough about this that I bet I could make it. And I just thought it'd be kind of a cool thing. And it was funny because... So, like I said, I've taught my mother real estate. My mother is actually my business partner in Uppercut Whiskey with me because I wanted to bring her along for the ride. And so I told her, I said, I sent her a message at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I'm going to buy a bunch of shit to make whiskey. Next morning, she's like, what are you talking about? Well, at that point in time, I had then apparently ordered everything on Amazon that it would take to make whiskey. I bought a still. I bought all of the fermenters. I bought all of the grains. I bought all of the stuff on Amazon. And I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt when the credit card bill hits. But
I'm already in.
Yeah. But I'm like, well, let's see what happens. And so we played around with it for a while. And I had made some pretty cool things.
When you say played around with it, you mean like with like...
Like I was making
how
varying
many
batches.
Prototypes?
Oh, God.
Until you ended up with Uppercut Whiskey.
Okay. So there were so many flavors. So Uppercut Whiskey is a cinnamon and walnut flavoring. And my girl actually was like, we should do cinnamon and walnut. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't, because that's gross. And she's like, no, it would work. And I'm like, no, it really wouldn't, because there was an apple, there was a caramel apple, there was a pear, there was a banana that may still see the light of day because it's amazing. And producer Matt can attest to that one.
You've already had the prototype?
Oh, yeah, we had the prototypes out, so...
Matt says, thumbs up.
Exactly.
You can talk.
So it was, and I'm like, all right, we'll try it. And by God, it was amazing. But it took probably
A lot
30,
of trial and error.
40 different distillations to get what it is today. And I was lucky enough that I had a friend who owned a distributorship. And I went to him with it, and I said, look, because I did some IT work for them. And I said, look, I'm not trying to push anything to you. I just want your opinion. You are this, that, and the other. He knows I was a whiskey guy. He knew that I had the whiskey steward certification and all this other stuff. And he tasted it, and he goes, yeah, this isn't bad. I'm like, okay, cool. I appreciate that. And we kind of kept going, and he tastes a little more, and he's like, yeah, this isn't too bad. And he's like, I know some people who could probably, help you if we want to do something with it. And I said, I really appreciate it. And he looked at me and goes, okay, cool. How much you want? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He goes, well, how much do you want?
To what, buy it?
And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I figured you wanted me to invest in it. And I went, no. He's like, really? I said, no, it's fine. I have... If I'm going to do it, I can do it. And he's like, well, okay. He says, well, I will. And I went, I appreciate that, but I don't need it at the moment. And actually, he was part of a very successful brand that is out at the moment. And he still owns an amazing distributorship. And so, but he's like, all right, well, here's the people that you need to talk to that can help you mass produce it. And I thought about it for a while, and I had a couple meetings with them, and they actually came to St. Louis and talked to me, and which really amazed me. And they were like, yep, you're in 100% control. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we decided we were going to launch. It took what, Matt, 6-7 months to get to at least the point of just even launching because of governmental, like I was talking about in the beginning.
It's also on alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole bunch to it. And if I would have known, I probably would have never done it like we were talking about. But I did it anyway.
There's a beauty to that.
There is a beauty to being naive. But finally, we got it after about 6 or 7 tries with them. And I still oversee every bit that goes into it whenever it's made. It's in 80 stores in Missouri, 40 in Illinois, and by third quarter of 2024, we will be in 42 states. And at that point in time, it will be much bigger than I ever thought it would be.
Really?
But we are about to launch in 42 states.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, I never ever thought that it would be. I thought it would be kind of cool. It may last for a few months. I may have the fight fans of St. Louis, the fight fans wherever would enjoy it. It turned out to be bigger than I ever thought.
Well, I can only say from a man with limited whiskey experience, I enjoy the drink.
It's what matters.
I also think marketing, chef's kiss.
Well, the uppercut, of course, came from the fight stuff. It was originally going to be called infused bourbon whiskey, and the government told me I couldn't do that.
I'm so glad you didn't.
Yeah, because it was going to be uppercut infusions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
it was going to be uppercut infusions.
I'm glad you cut that off.
Yeah, and we couldn't do that. So the government actually wouldn't let us do that. The original label is a little different, and actually Matt designed the label that is on this one today. That is in every store. So I give huge shout outs to Matt. Matt has more access to me than probably anybody as far as what we do together, and it's amazing. He does amazing work for me. And that's why he's got equity in the barbecue sauce business because of it. But yeah, so we took it, and now we kind of market it towards the fight family and in the areas, but it has been crazy that it has taken off as where it has, as far as on-premise bars have picked it up. Everything from locally here in St. Louis, Live by Lowe's, which is the biggest whiskey bar in the area.
The Shamrock FC events have it.
The Shamrock FC events have, the casino carries it. Because it's not just Shamrock FC events; it's actually in the casino. It's at Bugatti's, their main steakhouse restaurant. It's
Beautiful.
there. It's on the menu at 4 different bars, as far as it's a menu-based drink now, and so it's gigantic that way. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and there may be more that comes with the whiskey side of things. So
Of course.
there was a rye whiskey that I'm not supposed to tell the stories about with Matt, but there was a rye whiskey that I have created that may see the light of day also. As a different product. It'll be a different brand name. But there is the potential of an uppercut banana whiskey flavored. We have a vodka potentially in the works called Straight Jab Vodka, which we're going to do similar to the styles. And we're going to see what happens. It may see the light of day, it may not. I don't know yet.
So if you got uppercut is the whiskey, Straight Jab is the vodka,
Yep.
what is the overhand? Would that be
What we're going to
like
call the left hook gin.
left hook gin?
Left hook gin, I think, was the name that we were kicking around.
I'm a slut for this marketing. I gotta be honest with you. Maybe it's because I'm a fighter, but I'm like, God, like I gotta try it now.
Yeah, exactly. But that's been the whole thing. The label has sold probably more bottles than my Instagram posts, and I got a pretty good Instagram following. So, but that's been the.
I see the bottle at what is it called? I want to say it's called Friar Tuck's.
Yes.
It's right down the street from the gym.
Yep.
I don't want to say anything other than that. But long story short, I saw it there when I was going to buy whiskey.
Yeah.
When I bought your bottle of whiskey, I didn't buy it from you. I bought it from Friar Tuck's. And I remember thinking to myself, this is like the coolest thing ever because there's a buddy of mine who produced a thing and I didn't have to go to him to buy the thing.
As a matter, like I can't sell it to people. I can give I can give you a bottle, but because I have a federal license, I cannot sell it to the direct consumer. That's not how liquor works. You have to actually sell it to a distributor who sells it to stores. And so, yeah, I have to. Every product that I come up with has to go through a distributorship to get there. And so, whenever we launch in 42 states, there are 42 distributors who are going to be picking up this product. One of them has multiples, which is how we're going to do it. But that is also going to give us the ability then to sell online.
Gotcha.
And that is a massive, massive
market, yeah, because then you're not tied to the
well,
logistics.
Because then, so I have, and I don't want to use the term fans, but I have people who follow me and the things I've done from Texas to Virginia to San Diego to all of these places.
When you say follow you mean you, the brand, Jeremy Johnson.
Yeah, Jeremy Johnson,
Gotcha.
the brand. And so they are all about the idea that they can finally get the brand that Jeremy Johnson created. And so that's huge to me. So
I've touched on the whiskey.
Sure.
You have a tech company. You have a barbecue sauce that you're going to create that's infused with uppercut whiskey.
Yep.
You have also your own podcast, the MMA Bourbon Society. I don't want to sound like a broken record player, but truly, dude, I have a few things that are going on in my life, and I feel like there are just not enough hours in the day. I have no idea how you do it all. Do you outsource?
No.
Do you trust people?
Yes.
Like, what is it? Because there's no way there's enough hours in the week for you to do it yourself. You have to sleep, you have to eat.
I've gotten better with sleeping because, and as Matt can attest, I used to send him messages at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because I was still going.
I can tell you right now,
Yeah.
Matt, how is it with me?
Yeah, same thing, right?
On
It's
a scale of 1
yeah.
to annoyed, how are you with me?
I don't know. He's probably
He's a gem.
100%.
I can't say enough good things.
There is no one better in this field.
Yes.
At the moment, at all.
He
with
deserves
that.
all the success he's
Yes.
going to get.
Completely. But you have to be able to. You have to be able to have some help. You have to be able to have people who can handle some of the more minute details because I am not good at that. Yeah. I can give you the ideas. I can give you the market. I can give you the ideas of how we make it, how the business end of work, how the money will work. But I got to have somebody who can go, okay, I'm going to create your label and here's what I think it's. I give him, and I'm just going to use Matt as an example. I want it to look like old school boxers. I want it to be new, bold, and different. Whenever we did the barbecue sauce logo, he came into me with this, and I'm like, that's amazing with the big muscular pig boxing. It's awesome. He just redid the logo for my tech company. It's perfect, spot on. 2 things, and it was done. You have to have people like that behind you to make it work. I'm very lucky that like I have a staff that will, if I say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done, I trust them to go do it. and you have to be able to put people in places that you trust to do things with you. You know, in everything that I've done, from, you know, my real estate company to my bar, you know, and I own a small piece of it, but I own all the real estate, but I own a small piece of the bar. And even but I trust my business partner with that immensely. She's an amazing designer. She has an amazing creativity, and I took my part, she took her part, and it works. You've got to have the people who can do that. That's why I think that, you know, it may be taking us longer than we'd hoped to get the barbecue sauce off the market, but I think when it hits, people are going to go nuts with it. And it's because I can take what I've created as far as the Jeremy Johnson brand, you know, to use that. Matt has, you know, the MMA knowledge and days from the old days of Knuckle Junkies, which was a great show in St. Louis.
Dude,
it was it was the best. It should come back. I still think that we should bring it back.
I actually want to have Brett Otten on. I just don't know how to ask him.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that kind of you have to have those kind of people. And so between Matt and Chef Jay, who actually created the barbecue sauce, we're going to do great things with it. The whiskey is probably, in all honesty, it will probably be good enough that somebody will come along and buy me, and I'm okay with that. You know, I've already had 2 offers to sell, and that's not the right time yet. I want more out of it. I have more to add to it. So, but you know, at some point in time, it's just, you have to have people behind you, because like you said, I could not do this, number one, if I didn't have those people, and number two, if I didn't have a great base at home.
I agree. Behind every man is a team.
Exactly.
I do want to ask one thing.
Sure.
You say that you've had offers and you haven't accepted it yet because you have more to add to it.
Yes.
What goes into the calculus of that? Meaning, everyone's got a number.
Sure.
Right? But what goes into the calculus of your number? How much of it is like, I'm not going to ask you what the number is, but obviously like $1 million offer versus like a $5 million offer.
Sure.
2 completely different offers.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you go into saying no to someone, what are some of the variables that you're thinking about?
I am looking at the ideas of, okay, number one, how much have I invested personally into it? Because I have personally funded everything.
Yes.
Every marketing.
Say that again, Jeremy. One more time. What did you do?
I financed everything.
What does that mean, Jeremy? You bought everything?
I bought everything. I put every bit of money that goes into that product that sits on these tables right now out of my own pocket.
I know exactly how you feel.
Yes. So, you know, so there is that. But there also comes what do I feel that the brand itself is worth as far as Uppercut goes. I think that it hasn't been reached yet. I don't think the culmination of what Uppercut can be has been reached, because, as you said, I do a lot of stuff. I haven't had time in 2024 like I should have to designate to it. And I know that. And so my 2024 is going to be a little different, and that's why we are moving forward with more distribution and more places and things like that. And so I'm now looking at the idea of, once maybe I reach what the pinnacle of it could be, maybe we launch another brand, maybe we bring Straight Jab Vodka out, maybe we bring the rye whiskey, that kind of thing. You know, if that happens, sure, then we can talk money. But I think that I have more to do.
How much of how you navigate business is operations day to day versus planning for tomorrow? Because you cannot just run day to day if you don't have a plan for tomorrow.
So,
but what does that pie chart look like to you?
So I look at it as, if you are running your business day to day, you have created yourself a job. You are not a business owner, you're a job owner. And so every day is looking forward. We have time in the mornings that we have to do what we have to do to make the day-to-day operations, to make the payrolls, to make the things happen. But you have to stop and go, all right, what is next? What is the forward? And I try to spend at least half my time on what's next. And it's what's next in, whether it be a new client for the tech business, whether it be a new state for the whiskey, whether it be finding the right co-packer for the barbecue sauce, whether it be looking for the next house for the real estate company, you know, that kind of thing. There's always what's next. You know, today was nothing but what's next. So
Does that stress you? Or do you look forward to it? Or a combination?
So
Because it's uncertain.
I love the chase. I've gotten to the point now where I like the chase of things. And so I'm great now at like the ideas of starting things, but I've got to have the back to help me, because if not, I would just start. And I don't recommend that to any entrepreneur. The term serial entrepreneur that got picked up in like the 2010s, 2015s, like that to me, it's what I did, but it's not great for people because you can't focus on the what's nexts and you can't put 100% into your product. Locally, one of the greatest guys that I think that has done that idea of focus on one is Adam Meredith with Imposed Will, his clothing line. I
agree.
Adam Meredith, he and I have had some great conversations about that. He's like, well, why don't you just stop and do this? I'm like, because I can't. Because I have so much else that I've already done that I can't do it. Whereas his laser focus on Imposed Will has done, it's amazing.
I've had conversations with him, and he's told me some of the growth patterns, and I cannot express to you how impressed I am with him, the individual, his drive, his entrepreneurial spirit, and the intellect that it takes to run that business, to run the marketing, and kind of combine it with, because he's an avid jiu-jitsu practitioner, he's incorporated the people to the left and to the right of him while simultaneously running, and I cannot stress this enough, a successful business that generates profits and not just revenue.
And it's gigantic, especially in that space.
Especially for him.
You know, that's especially in that space.
I need to have him on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Too. He used to run his own.
Yes, I was on his show a couple of different times.
I know, I watched.
And yeah, it was very cool. The first one, it was funny because he was kind of dumbfounded with me. He actually said that in the beginning of it. He was like, I was stuck and I didn't know what to ask him, and it became a thing, and it was funny. So yeah, because like he went from like business talk to how Jeremy Johnson's hair became a thing, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Well, dude, we went from like, Jesus, what was our transition?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on, but it's fine. So
I just go with the flow.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it's a lot. I wholeheartedly recommend if you're going to do one thing, do maybe two things. And there are things that you can do that aren't gigantically like crazy time consuming. I hate to say it, but real estate's easy. I tell everyone you should buy real estate.
I do too.
And I will tell you, you ever want to know, sit down and ask me somewhere. I'll tell you how to do it.
I am not a financial advisor, and none of the things that I am about to say you should take to heart or make any decisions on.
Exactly.
But I am a big proponent of multiple revenue streams. And there could be revenue streams from the sense of creating a pretty stable portfolio where you're buying blue chip stocks and you're buying it for the long run, living on some of the dividends, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, don't go crazy with Bitcoin, people.
I mean, listen, I'm actually, to that point, I'm actually bringing on a gentleman first week of May who is like, when I tell you, bathed in the waters of cryptocurrency. Him and I, we drove to Jefferson City and we had an hour and a half discussion about why I will never buy crypto and why he thinks I'm an idiot. For an hour and a half, we had the discussion. We got out of the car, and we were like, all right, on to business. Like,
fair, yeah, no. But anyway, continue.
To the point of real estate.
Yeah.
I think real estate is a necessary part of your portfolio at this point because it will only appreciate. I don't care what anyone says. If you look at any metric from 1900s to 1910, there's 1911 to 1920, so on and so forth, every decade. Real estate has always appreciated because the population boom has caused supply and demand to hit a point where you never have enough supply for the demand of real estate. And anyone who understands general market forces understand what that does to price. Yep. And what does that do to price? People own that. There's wealth to be built on that. To the point of real estate, I agree that it's easy, but I would also say that it's never been harder to get into than it is today. I know people that make six figures a year can't buy a home. Not a rental property.
Okay.
Not a rental property.
I'm not talking homes.
Not a fixer-upper.
Your homes are not an investment. Your home is not an investment. It's not. Because you'll do things to your home that have no idea or that have no bearing towards anything that becomes an additional add value to it. I can tell you though that and I will be the person who tells you that rentals are the way to go. Because at some point in time, you get to become
Two family, single family, four family.
You can become your own bank.
Yeah.
In less time than you would ever suspect. You can. The idea to amass anything is passive income. You got to make money while you're sleeping. And I know that we went a lot in money in this thing, but
I agree.
But you have to make money while you're sleeping, whether it be investments, whether it be that. But if you have 10 houses who produce you $300 to $400 a month, how much does it take?
Each? Yeah.
So
what he's basically saying is the difference of the mortgage and the rental, meaning he's buying a home and the mortgage could be like $1,000 a month. He's charging the tenant $1,200 a month. The difference, the delta, would cover the mortgage. The extra is take home for him. The value that he adds is he's providing affordable housing for the individual who couldn't necessarily maybe apply for a loan or afford the home. And the delta therein, the profitability he needs is because he's now the homeowner. If the HVAC goes out, if you need a new gutter, if something happens with the home, you as a renter are not liable for that.
Right.
He is. So that the reason I bring that up is there's a lot of talk about BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard about like these big monoliths buying these homes. But a lot of home ownership, we also do this, by the way, Jeremy. Mm-hmm. We have a 2-family. We have a real estate portfolio as well. And I have like an insider a view on this.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying. But there's also like, not risk is not the word, but management of this. It's not like it's, I'm just creating $200-$300 per house. There's expenses to be paid. There's things that you're liable for.
But think about this, okay?
At the end, it's still the smart move. Because,
number one, someone else is paying your mortgage. Someone else is building equity in that place for you. All right. Secondly, you are getting in a specific amount of profit every month after expenses, okay?
I hate to interrupt. What he means, again, I'm only saying this for people that might not know.
Sure.
When he says you have someone paying for the mortgage, like I said, he is financing these houses. He's leveraging it. But by having a renter that is paying him rent that is excess of the mortgage, he's not necessarily, quote unquote, liable for it. The person that's paying him will inevitably pay the mortgage. The difference is the person renting will never have equity or, quote unquote, ownership in that home. Jeremy will.
Right.
And it's not predatory. It's perspective. It's also like a value add. How many people don't have good credit?
Completely.
How many people have unreliable revenue coming in from whatever, maybe they're gig economy workers or whatever. They can't get into an apartment.
Right.
They can't buy a home. They still need housing. Individuals like Jeremy provide that.
People need a place to live.
I agree.
And so let's say that if you are making, let's say that you have 10 houses, okay? And you make $400 profit on each house per month. That's $4,000, correct?
Cash.
$4,000.
Excess.
How much do you need coming in to live?
That's a loaded question. Depends on the person.
But it depends on the person. But if you can get to the point where your livelihood is coming from those properties and passive income, and so as you do that, you now have the ability to go and do other things. Because as you build equity in those properties, then you can take and you can borrow against them. You can buy more. You can take money out. And the best part about it is that money is debt, so it's not a tax thing.
Yep.
So
I do have one caveat.
Hit me with it.
And it goes against everything that I've said on this podcast. And that's, I don't think anyone should be able to buy a single-family home and rent it out.
Why?
Because a single-family home stands as the prelude to wealth. It's like usually the first investment that a family makes.
Okay.
If you want to buy a duplex and rent it out, I'm for it because it's almost like Intuit for the name of the in the name of the real estate. It's like it is two families that will live in here. So even if I live in here myself, I'm planning on renting it out. Right? Sure. Now, if you're buying it with the sole purpose of demolishing it, using the land however you want to see fit, that's a different story. But what I'm saying is, if you're purchasing a single-family home as a commercial real estate agent or a residential real estate monolith, I don't think it should be legal. I think that if you're buying a single-family home, it should only be legal to live in it. That is a crazy statement, right?
No, it's not.
If you're buying a multifamily home or creating like an apartment complex, that's a different animal into itself. The reason I say that is in the last 3 years, if enough people, Jeremy, do what you and I do with single family homes, you're going to price everybody out of single family homes. You're going to create an artificial gate to home ownership, and we will be the lords of our own manor, but we will also be the hypocrites of the world, because you and I don't want someone else to own our shit, yet we're going to own everything else that people rent from. We're creating the problem that we want to strive away from.
I understand where you're going. I do. But the thing that I see with that particular statement is that, okay, so the 21-year-old just starting out, the idea of home ownership, but they have, so let's say that I have a tenant, 23, 24, 2 kids, rough start in life, can't afford it, but they wanted the ability to have a yard for their children. What do they do? Okay, so it becomes somebody who, I gave these kids a shot because they didn't have the credit to do it. But I'm just saying is there are opportunities for people like us who do buy houses to do some good for people who may never see the idea of home ownership.
I agree.
But they get to be in their own place and not have to listen to their neighbors.
I agree 100%. And this is where because I am not a liberal nor a conservative. I am an individual thinker on key topics. I think that government has the sole responsibility to go into industries that are not profitable, and this is one of them. For instance, our tax dollars go into things that we will never, quote unquote, see the value of in certain aspects of life, right? And I'm okay with that, because I do believe in like taking care of the people that I don't know. Yeah. Because you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right. I think the government has a I don't want to say job, and I want to be careful how I verbiage or the verbiage that I use in this, because I am not for Big Brother. I'm not. Right. But I think there needs to be a government incentive for first-time home buyers so that they can get into the equity namespace. I think that the home, for the vast majority of people, two of the things that they want more than anything is a 401k, which they're not even fucking managing. Right. And Wall Street is just going to bloat because of it.
100%.
And home ownership. 401ks are now more readily available than any time ever in human history since its invention, because of the death of pensions, which arguably were superior in every way, right? So 401k is I wouldn't even call it a silver medal, a bronze medal. And then home ownership is, in my opinion, the basis for like the middle class in America. And we've been talking extensively about entrepreneurship, about wealth management, about creating value and looking at money as a tool. How could you ever do that if you're always looking at money as a means to live? If you want that's fair. If you want to invest in the entrepreneurial spirit, it's not from the poor. No. They're worried about surviving. It has to be from the middle class because their survival needs are met. Now they have the luxury of thinking about thriving. And that, in my opinion, is the greatest thing about America. Is because in other countries, your whole life you can go through just thinking about surviving. In America, and not just America, but other countries, but for me, I love this country. In America, you can start thinking about thriving. And I love that you're bringing up real estate. And I love that we're talking about entrepreneurship and businesses. And I love that we're talking about diversification of portfolios and multiple revenue streams and making money while you're sleeping. I agree with 99% of what you've said tonight. I'll take that. Maybe not even, maybe even 100.
I'll take 99%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But this is where I start to go and say, there's not going to be an entrepreneur in the world that is going to take the personal hit to provide wealth to other people because it's not financially stable. It's not like you cannot run this business. And government has a role because they collect my money.
They do. Yes.
To run the businesses. Like, if government did things that made money, why would they ever need a tax?
100%.
So they don't. We've acknowledged that they are a money pit. Fine. Then do the things that no one else in the private sector will do. The public sector is exclusively doing the good of the people in which the private sector has not already filled that role. I think first-time home ownership is that role that they need to fill now. I don't think it's relieving a student loan debt. Tough kid, you signed that piece of paper. Deal with it. I don't think it's supplying money for wars halfway across the hemisphere on both sides so they can throw missiles at each other. I don't think it's to propagate fake governments and create democracies around the world where they don't need to be, and they don't, let's call a spade, don't fucking want.
Right.
I think what it needs to be is internal with people that are young, trying to create a better future for the next generation. They, in their own way, Jeremy, regardless if it's the same way you and I are doing it, are trying to turn a 0 into a 1. And if there's any job in government, it is to allow people the opportunity, not to guarantee, but to allow people the opportunity through the work of their life to turn a 0 into 1. If we can do that,
I'll buy into that.
I guarantee tomorrow will be better than today.
I'd buy into that.
So
I like that.
Jeremy,
Yes,
I have had an immense amount of fun these last 2 hours.
I have too. I didn't realize it was 2 hours. Wow.
Flies by, right?
It does.
One of the things I ask every guest, or I'm going to ask every guest, so you're literally the second episode, is what is a piece of advice or something that you navigate this world, or a lesson you've learned that you don't necessarily want someone to have to learn the way you did? What is something that you would impart onto others that you generally find value in? It could be about business. It could be about life. It could be spiritual. What is something that you would want to tell your son, your daughter?
That is an amazing question, and it's very loaded and very hard to, even think around that. But I have always been a purveyor of keep your thoughts and keep your things that you want to do to yourself until you find someone who believes in what you want to do. Because you can be told 9 times out of 10 that it's a dumb idea, it's a dumb this, it's not the right thing. Yet that person who's telling you no has never experienced it, never done it. And so with that, I would tell everyone, basically, keep everything close to the chest until it's time to not. And I think that everyone will know when it's not.
I love that. Cool. Jeremy Johnson, I appreciate you being on Easy Talk.
Well, thank you for having me.